Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's event. My name is Javier Chavez, and I am Associate Director of the Coral Gables Art Cinema. I have been working with the cinema for 9 years, wearing many different hats in that time and continuing to wear many different hats. But my favorite one is as one of the lead programmers of the cinema, working to curate the film selection, as well as putting on events such as the one that you are watching. Before we get started, I do have some people and organizations I need to acknowledge, the ones without whom this event wouldn't be possible. They are the City of Coral Gables, the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs, the Florida Department of Cultural Affairs, the National Endowment of the Arts, our esteemed board of directors, and our founder, Stephen Krams. Without him, we literally would not have a cinema. And very importantly, I want to thank Pam and Andy Mirowitz, who are not only Mollye's parents, but volunteers of the cinema for several years now. And it's thanks to them that we were able to connect with Mollye for this conversation this evening. With all of that said, we'll get started. And I want to introduce our two panelists, first being Nomadland producer Mollye Asher, and Coral Gables Art Cinema's executive director and film producer herself, Brenda Mo. And to get right into it, Mollye, this is a question for you. I want to talk about your early career because it's really fascinating to us. First being, you have such an extensive filmography with short films. And I wanted to know if you could share what that experience like working on all of those short films, what you like about that kind of content, and how did those working on those movies prepare you for feature length work?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first short film that I did was really what made me realize that I wanted to get into film. Prior to that, I was in theater, and I was getting frustrated with not really having control over my career. And so I made a short with some friends and then discovered that I loved putting everything together. And so I then went to NYU Graduate Film, and that's where all those shorts, I was making all those shorts while I was studying there. And that was how I was learning. And then my first feature, I remember thinking, okay, well, it's just going to be like I'm doing like 4 shorts in a row. But I do think that the way that you put together a short film is ultimately the way that you're going to put together a feature film.
I'm muted. So incidentally, I actually happened to go to NYU too, to the Tisch School of the Arts, and I understand that you got 2 degrees from there. You got your BFA and then an MFA in the graduate film program. Chloé Zhao, the director of Nomadland, also got an MFA from NYU. Is that how you two met?
Yes, we were in the same class. It was a small class of 36. We were all very close, really supportive of each other. Still are. Actually, just had a Zoom reunion of everyone, which was really nice. But yeah, that's where I met her, and it was really, we became friends first before we started working together. And I think that's like the perfect way, I think, to start a working relationship.
And how did that then lead to, so you've produced all of Chloé's films thus far, Songs My Brothers Taught Me, The Writer, and now Nomadland. How did you guys go from, when you friends and classmates at NYU to Chloé's first feature, Songs My Brother Taught Me?
Well, she had gone through the Sundance Labs with that script. It was somewhat of a different than how it ended up being, but so she was, she was in a place where she wanted to bring on collaborators and try and make the film. So she, I remember, it's a very vivid memory of she took me to lunch in the East Village, and we were eating pork buns. And I remember her asking me if I wanted to work on the film with her. And I was just actually saying this to her, that I remember how she said it as if like there was going to have to be any kind of considering. And I was like, yes, of course I do, because I believe in you, and so it was very quickly that I hopped onto that, and we started to make that film, which was a really long that was a very tough film to put together. Learned a lot.
Okay. Brenda, I want to lob this to you since with your production background, is there anything you want to jump on in terms of Mollye's career in short films?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many questions that I have for you. There's a lot of parallels that you and I have. I was a New York City based producer. I was producing short films that were then distributed onto television or film festivals. So one of the things that I loved about producing short films and the short films I was producing was going into a community that I wasn't familiar with and working primarily with just regular people who then either portrayed themselves or a version of themselves, but were still actors. And there's a lot to go over there. There's a lot to discuss. So you have a regular person, but you still have a contract and you want to manage expectations. This is going to be an 18-hour day and there's a lot of sitting around. So I would love to hear your experience of working with non-professional actors, because this film is so lovely and the contribution that they make to it is really incredible. So I just love to hear more about it.
Yeah, well, I also love going into communities that are not my own, and I've had a wonderful opportunity doing that with these films with Chloe. So with Songs My Brothers Taught Me and The Rider, we're both on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, and I think, you know, one of the biggest things when we're working with non-actors is creating trust, and so that they feel comfortable sharing themselves. And there's a lot of work done prior to being on set where it's not rehearsing, it's just getting to know one another. And Chloe, for example, when she's writing her scripts, she's remembering conversations she had with the real people and then placing that in the script in the best like narrative place to put it. But you know, I continue to be friends with all of the people too that we've worked with that are non-professional actors. There has to be another term for that though, because
yeah, I know that's what I was trying to think of.
And they are getting paid. So.
Javier and I were having this conversation and trying to figure out wait a minute, what do we call them?
It's weird
Regular
to say.
People. Yeah.
Like it's weird. We're saying like it's weird to say like non-actors because Brenda noted they aren't really playing themselves at the same time.
Right.
They are playing a version of themselves. So to call them non-actors is kind of a misnomer. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I love it that you're still in contact with the group of people. So is that true for all of the films or just Nomadland?
All of them, yeah, because you form a real friendship, because there's so much time spent in the establishing of the relationship before the shoot and then during it too, because you're oftentimes living with everyone. So like on Songs My Brothers Taught Me, the actors were living in the house we were all living in, waking up and having breakfast with us. And with Nomadland, while they weren't necessarily, they were staying in their rigs, but and we were staying in a motel, but they were coming to have dinner with us, you know, so it was yeah.
I love it. I just want to pivot now to the nomadic lifestyle. And what was your introduction to the nomadic lifestyle? And how does that influence you now? How do you feel about that lifestyle, just through everything that you've been through, especially with this film?
Yeah, I wasn't aware of it at all, you know, and until you know, reading the book, and it, you know, and then meeting everybody, it was like, you know, you could be standing next to them in the grocery line at the store, you would have no idea that this person lives in their van, because, you know, there's like so many people are, you know, college educated, or like there's they're keeping they're keeping themselves clean. It's not like they're like homeless, and so that was really eye-opening. I personally don't think I could ever do that, live in that way. I mean, the small space doesn't bother me because I live in New York City. Maybe not much bigger an apartment than a van, but I think it's a really particular kind of person who doesn't need a home base,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That not needing a home base, it really the film touches on that in such a special way, where it feels like when I was watching it, at least, almost it's a foreign concept, just being able to really let go of that and just keep on moving on. So something that you said about the nomadic lifestyle, that you weren't aware of it, makes me jump on to my next question, which is wall drug. So I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. Wall drug was a beacon. Like, I knew about it. I was born in 1975. I'm a 45-year-old woman. So maybe, and I'm from Pacific Northwest, so maybe I just have a different perspective of it. But I have seen interviews with Chloé and with you, where interviewers aren't familiar with it, and they refer to it as something, like as just like a truck stop or something. So, and I know Chloé has talked a lot about wall drug and her familiarity with it and her passion for it and wanting to get it on film. So did you know about wall drug before you guys shot?
Oh, most certainly, because you can't drive in South Dakota without seeing a billboard that's saying like how many more miles until you get to Wall Drug. They have the most incredible marketing department.
Incredible. That's so awesome. Javier and I had this conversation. So as I had mentioned, I saw an interview previously with you and Chloé and some other producers, where somebody referred to Wall Drug as a truck stop, and I was like, it's a iconic institution. So I had to ask Javier, do you know about it? And he said, I know about it now because of the movie. And then I realized that it might be normal for people not to know about Wall Drug, and what a great introduction. As with everything, I mean, the Amazon warehouse, I don't know how you all secured that. I can't even.
Everybody asks about the Amazon, and it's so funny because that was actually the easiest location to get. Like the beet harvest was really tough to find a beet harvest that would let us shoot there. Badlands National Park took months and months and months. But Amazon, we decided just to go straight to the top, and we were like, asked Frances, will you contact them? So she wrote to Jeff Blackburn, I think is his name, and wrote an email, told him a little about the film, and he said yes. It was really incredible.
Yeah, that is really incredible. The filming that you all do in the Badlands is amazing, and the time that you all give, these really amazing outdoor spaces, especially in the American West. I mean, it's a travel log, it's a road story, and it's absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. So then, focusing more on going back to the story of the film, how many months did it take you to produce the film's RTR?
Oh, that was like one of the first things that I started to put together. So the RTR is, nowadays there's like 10,000 people who go to this yearly gathering. And we were doing this to be 2011. And so at that time, it was still kind of new, when there would only be around like 50 people there. And so, so much is in the book about it, but then we were then connected through Jessica, the author of the book, with some of the people who were there at the original RTRs. And so they were sharing pictures with us for our art department, and then connecting me to people they thought would be interested in being in the film. And so it was a process of a really long process of like kind of casting those nomads and their vehicles, because, you know, it goes from like, you know, there's a Prius to a school bus, and so visually that was going to be an important thing as to how that was designed. And actually the DP put together a map of where we were going to place all of the vehicles. And so after the months of putting it together and finding the right space in the desert to do it, I wish that there was a behind the scenes video of us, the coordination of getting everybody there, because we placed everybody in an A, B, C, or D, and then like numbered them, and told them a specific time to get there, and then they had various different stops we had created in the desert, like go to the you know, the tent with the yellow ceiling, and you know, and then that's where they would check in and get a little bit more understanding of what to expect, you know, paperwork, that kind of thing. And then they went to their next spot and waited, and then were brought in. So we did this so that there wasn't like a big traffic jam. But then once they got there, they just started setting up their homes, you know, putting out their doormats and bringing out their chairs, and then they lived there. So the RTR that we created for the film turned into its own real RTR.
That has to be so special for those participants, just to have this, you know, nobody's seeking always exclusivity, especially like this nomadic lifestyle, but that has to be special.
Yeah, they formed a group on Facebook called the 5 Gallon Bucket Club, and it's just exclusively for the people that were there. And so they're sharing, you know, now they're sharing all the reviews, and like they're just it's great. You know, they were just talking about how someone brought up how they had a pot holder that Fran had made, and she was making pot holders during the shoot and knitting various different things, and people were piping in being like, I got one too, and then telling the story of how they got it. It's really nice. So it does feel like we're continuing to engage with them throughout this whole.
And when you talk about it now, I can understand you know, why and how you would remain connected to this really special group of people. And it, you know, it just feels like a part of the movie.
Yeah, so, and they, you know, like the chili event that's in the film, that was organized. Like I actually found a specific person that was in this community who will sometimes be the one in charge of creating the chili. So she was my right hand in organizing that, and so making sure that we had a full, you know, chili dinner, and everyone was contributing to it. So all of the nomads helped us make it.
I do one last thing. I want Javier to be able to step in here with some questions. One thing that I did feel from watching this movie and the nomadic family that is represented is it feels like an independent film community, where I've gone into you know, a small community in South Texas and hired a bunch of you know, filmmakers, and everybody knows each other from having worked together on previous gigs, and there's that familiarity that is so welcoming, and there's something so attractive about that. And I think it's one of the reasons that this film is so special, is that there's this sense of belonging.
Yeah, definitely. Because even though they're out on the road, you know, basically usually alone, there is this support group in a way
that they know they can reach out to, or will revisit.
Yeah, exactly.
Again.
Like one of the nomads in the film was having some health problems, and posted about it on the 5 Gallon Bucket Club thing, and then everybody was then reaching out, helping her get to where she needed to go.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So on that note, one of the, I guess, elephants in all rooms these days. I'm curious how like the pandemic has affected the nomads.
Oh, it hasn't really, because they're self-sufficient in their rigs, you know. So I've talked to Swanky about that, and she's like, it really hasn't affected me. Just when she goes into town to the Planet Fitness to, well, actually I should ask her, because a lot of times people will go to the Planet Fitness to take showers. So I should find out from her what happened then when the gyms were closed. But in general, like it didn't really necessarily change their lives. They were used to it. They're used to the, you know, the isolation and.
Definitely, I guess some stuff that we can learn from them. We actually have a great question from one of the attendees that I think kind of ties into the conversation we're having with you about like your experience producing and all that. And I want to preface this where it seems like a basic question, but I do feel like people often don't understand the role of a producer, especially when you consider that the person who walks away with the Oscar for Best Picture is the producers of the film. So can you tell us, so Johanny Ponce is asking, you know, what exactly does the producer of a movie like Nomadland do? And I want to also, with that question, how does producing a movie like Nomadland, where you were traveling from different locations, living the nomadic lifestyle during the shoot, differ from something, let's say, more traditional?
Yeah. So what does a producer do? I teach producing at Rutgers, and it's a 14-week class teaching what a producer does. So, but basically I like to say that the producer is the engine, and they, you know, depending on how things are, like with Nomadland, for example, Peter Spears and Frances McDormand came across the book Nomadland, read it, thought this could make a good movie. They optioned it, and then went to look for a director. Then Frances saw the writer at Toronto and then called Peter and said, I think that I found our director for Nomadland, and then shared it with her. And then they originally thought that that Fran would play Linda May in the book, because there's much more, she's really the one that's throughout that whole book, and there's a narrative there. But Chloe right away said, no, I want Linda May to play herself, and I want Swanky to play herself, and I want Fran's character to be the glue kind of going through all of that. And at that point, once Chloe came onto the project, she then right away wanted me to come on, and also Dan Janvey, another producer, who like me has made films with non-actors. He did Beast of the Southern Wild, so, you know, so that's sort of the what you call like development phase, where you're getting the optioning a script or finding a director, and then there was the writing phase. And so the producer during that time is working with the writer on the script, and then once you have that together, oh, of course, also there's finding the financing. So in this case, we had a negative pickup with Searchlight. So they said from the start that they wanted to distribute the movie, and then that was why we were then able to find the financing to back that up. And then, you know, once you have this script, this roadmap, you start to put together all the pieces, and that's the pre-production phase. So that's when you're hiring crew, you are finding the locations, you're getting insurance, you're setting up everything at the union for the Screen Actors Guild, or, you know, really laying all the groundwork. A lot of making a film is done in the pre-production. And then in production, the producer is making sure that the director's vision is being executed, and they have the space and place to do it. And overseeing everything, overseeing all the departments. And a lot of times too, I think producing is HR, like human relations, because it all really comes, you know, there's obviously you know, in every job, you know, there's some personalities or whatever that might have, you know, clash or whatever. Not that there was necessarily clashing on Nomadland, but we're we're the person that they go to just also just personally, so that they're feeling okay, especially with like this shoot was so long, taking care of people, really making sure that they had their needs met. And then in post-production, we're producers are there too, so we're finding the right vendors, the right people to work with for that as well. So and then making notes on the edit, and then we're part of the whole distribution strategy and marketing. And so we worked closely with Searchlight on the trailer and all of the marketing materials. So a producer really sees it from the beginning to the end.
One of the things, just to comment on Chloe, one of the things I appreciate about her so much is listening to her talk about her relationship with you, and that, she really didn't have to think about these things, that she would go to sleep at night, have a nice meal, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, give everybody a few new pages, and her vision was just made to happen. And she knows that you all, that you carried the brunt of that and made it happen. And it's so nice to hear, a director really acknowledge that. And it really is everything. I want to ask about about what you're doing at Rutgers. Are you doing that now during the pandemic, and how is that going?
Yeah, I started in the fall, so it's remote teaching, and it's been really special thing, I think, during the pandemic to be teaching young filmmakers. It's really
nice.
Inspiring.
And so you have so it's remote teaching, and you're connecting with these young people. Is there a plan for when there isn't remote teaching? Are you going into the classroom? Do you know?
I have to figure that out because, as a producer, I travel usually to make my films. I think very few of my films have been in New York City where I live. So, it's ideal for me for it to remain remote. That might be a possibility. So that then if I'm on a shoot, I can still, do my once a week class. But if it's in person, it's probably going to be difficult.
Your students must be so excited to be learning under you. And Javier asked a question about the pandemic's effect on the nomads that. What about you and your fellow filmmakers?
I had so I had a film come out, it's called Swallow, on March 6th of last year. It went out in theaters, and then it was in New York and LA, and then March 13th, week later, it was supposed to open up through the rest of the country. But the March 13th was when the lockdowns all started. And so that film was what's called day and date, where it's theaters and online at the same time. IFC does that a lot with their films. And so it was really interesting because I think that film benefited in some way from the pandemic, because everybody was at home looking for something new to watch. And everybody was like ravenous for films and things to see. And that film outperformed, I think, how we imagined that it would. Also has some similarities of themes of isolation and things like that. So, but then I was in post on two films. So Nomadland and another film. And it was tough because you could they're sending their edits, but it's tough when you're not in the same room with people. You're not feeling them, and then you have a test screening, and you can feel the audience and how they're responding, but we had to have a remote test screening. So that human connection was really felt in the post period.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's really, and before this Q&A started, we were talking a little bit about the award season reality and dealing with the award season in your apartment. So, if you want to talk a little bit about that, what is it like to have it's so much excitement about the work that you're doing, and you're and you're in your apartment.
Well, first of all, it's just so incredible to be getting the kind of recognition that we're getting for this unusual film. You know, I'm over the moon that it's connecting with people in the way that it is emotionally, because that's what you set out to do when you're making movies, is to make something like emotionally impactful. And we might not do it in the way that normal Hollywood movies do it. And so it's great then when it's still is reaching a large audience like this. But, you know, yeah, it's been strange to, it's unreal. I think it would probably be unreal, the awards attention in normal life, but it feels even more unreal here now because I'm like alone in my apartment with my partner, like watching the Golden Globes and then being like, oh my God. But so hopefully in the future though, it seems like, you know, vaccines are happening and, you know, we really would love to all get together and really celebrate with one another. It's tough to not be able to celebrate and congratulate each other in person.
I want to touch a little bit on when Brenda mentioned how, you know, Chloé relies on you so much and just trusts you so much working together. Jumping off of that, I read an interview with Peter Spears where he noted how for him and Frances McDormand, the style of filmmaking that you and Chloé have was not something they were used to. So, and I'm gonna quote him because I just think it's such a great thing to say, is like having our other producing partners, Mollye Asher and Dan Janvey, was invaluable. So I wanted to ask, you know, what that's like when you're working with, and Peter Spears produced Call Me By Your Name, which was nominated for Best Picture. Frances McDormand is Frances McDormand. So what is it like to, you know, work with such experienced filmmakers who also like rely on you to fill in where their experiences haven't taken them in a place that yours have? So if you could comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, they jumped right in and were very open about the things that they you know, weren't used to. So, you know, something that's different with Chloé's films versus a more traditional film is, first of all, the size of the crew is much smaller. There were just 23 of us making this, and that's so that we can be nimble and we can move around. We can fade into the background. So like all of our vehicles looked like they could be Nomad vehicles. So our equipment truck, it wasn't a truck, it was a cargo van, which also lends itself to the kind of aesthetic that Chloé and her DP Josh have. And so there's very little lighting that's done. Normally when you set up a shot somewhere, like it takes like an hour to do all the lighting. In our case, it's like you put up a little bit something there and there, and then like we're shooting within like 10 minutes of arriving in a location. But something that I think that was something new for Peter, for example, was, you know, when Chloé's writing her script, when she has a script, but then she'll change things sometimes, you know, like she says, she'll deliver new scenes. And when she does, we might have to find a new location, or the schedule changes more than it would on a normal shoot. So like when we were shooting in the Badlands, normally you'd get like a location for a certain period of time when you're going to shoot it, like this day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But instead, like I get it for 2 weeks. So then I know that if like she wakes up in the morning and the sun isn't the kind of sun she wanted to imagine for that scene, we can pivot and go and film something else. And also, you know, we sometimes will be casting as we're shooting, you know, so Chloé might see somebody and be intrigued by them and pull them in, you know. So that's also something that's a bit different. But Fran and Peter were just like ready to do anything, you know, grab somebody coffee if they needed it. And that's something too, like as producers on her films, you really, everybody's wearing many hats, and the crew is truly essential, every single one of them, because there's so few of us.
I feel like that just speaks to like the people that you guys are the lives that you're documenting. Like as a nomad, you have to do everything yourself. So I imagine like having to do work on the shoot in that manner definitely helped everybody get in that mindset to be able to tell these people's stories. So jumping off of all of this, and with your being a teacher, we have a question from Catherine Miranda, who lives here in Miami and wants to know what the biggest advice you would have for someone who wants to be in the place that you are right now as a producer. What would that advice be?
Yeah, it's find your people. So like when I discovered that I was interested in filmmaking, the first thing that I did was, well, apply to film school, just because I was a little bit later in my life, and so I wanted to jumpstart it. But I joined organizations like Film Independent, or now it's called the Gothams, and I'm not film IFP in New York, and I just tried to. I volunteered at the New York Women in Film and Television, and I just tried to find that community, and because once you're part of that, and I always encourage them to stay connected and stay involved in the community, because it's those people who help you make your films. It's those people who help you get your next job. So I would advise to community is really important.
I also, just to jump in here on this, it really is about who you know. Get to know the film community where you're at, get to know film producers, get to know location managers, get to know line producers. I got my first job really on a whim, and I was sent to Miami to shoot a film. And what I did is we hired an on-the-ground producer to teach me producing, and he had a huge job and he did it. And anybody in Miami knows Gary Sales, and he's phenomenal, and he's based out of New York and Miami, but he took me under his wing and was like, this is how you do it. And then so get to know people.
Yeah.
And you do have to give your time, a little bit. So.
Mm-hmm.
So we have one of our attendees wants to ask a question directly, so I'm going to get them on. So this question is going to come from Nathan Moe. And Nathan, when I do what I'm about to do, Zoom is going to kick you out and then sign you back in so that we can see and hear you. So just bear with the program for a second. So let's do this.
I think this is going to be actually my 3-year-old who's supposed to be going to bed. Sorry, that's my son.
Hi.
Hi, buddy. You going night-night?
He works at the cinema too sometimes. He has to earn his keep.
Can you unmute him?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry, I'll turn this off in just a moment. It's hilarious. Hi, buddy.
It's not on. Oh.
Hi, Mommy.
Hi, buddy. You go night-night?
Yes,
I love you.
I do.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. Say good night.
Nine.
Good night, buddy. Javier, that was very kind of you to tune my family in.
All right. Okay, so we have some really great questions from the audience, and they're all really interrelated. So I got this one from Andy Myers, who wants to know how much of the feature, and keeping in mind, as Mollye had mentioned, the film is based on a book. So how much of the film was planned and prepped beforehand? How much did you ad-lib or produce in the moment?
I would say that the majority of it was planned ahead of time. We did go in and had a script, and we were, casting, locking locations prior to the film. And, in an unusual way, like there's a lot of street casting, call it. And then I'm not sure that as to like what's, so most of it was planned, but planned in a way that allowed for spontaneity, so I should try and remember an example of something that was not planned necessarily, that was discovered while we were working. But yeah, I would say the majority of it actually is planned.
And then here's a question jumping off of that from Robert Murray, who wants to know what parts of the original story from the book did you guys have to leave out because of logistics or other issues that might have come up, and how did that impact the final film that we ended up seeing?
Well, I tried to get the sugar beet harvest that's talked about in the book. It's in North Dakota, and it's massive, and that's where so many people go. But they weren't interested. There was no reason for them, they felt, to have a film being shot at their factory. So so that was different. I found a place in Nebraska. But I think the book is it's like investigative journalism, and there's a real social commentary, I think, that comes from the book. Like there's like an indictment toward Amazon, whereas the way that we're approaching this is that it's a individual story. It's Fern's story, and we're placing, we're showing her working at Amazon, and we're showing that she has to live in a van. So we're not in the way that the book is, we're not giving our opinions necessarily, but allowing for the audience to gather what they would gather from it.
And then here's a question from Virginia Muller, and I want to jump in and say, like, one of my favorite things about movies is how they bring so many people together to create this one work of art. So jumping off of that, Virginia wants to know about the process behind the artistic decisions that are made during the making of the film. How do the directors, producers, and the screenwriters' goals and ideas interact, and who has the ultimate say in that? In keeping, Chloe might say, Mollye, I want to do this kind of shoot, and you're like, I'm not sure that we can do that. So how does that all get balanced out?
In more of a general way, or?
Yeah, and it's like, and it's like, how do, the director, producer, and scriptwriter's goals and ideas interact, and then who has the ultimate say in what is going to happen with the movie?
Well, a lot of times, I'll get a script from someone, and we'll start, and it's not yet quite there. So we're, what I'm doing as a producer is trying to understand what it is that this filmmaker wants to say, what their vision is, and then help them get that on the page. A lot of times I feel like when you get a script, it's really only like 30% what's in their head. So helping them get that down. And then, a lot of it is understanding their vision. And so then when I'm finding crew, it's like I'm finding people who are going to fit with their taste for the tone of the movie, that kind of thing. So it's all really led by the director's vision. And as far as like who has final say, with my films, these independent films, like I always want to make sure that the director has final cut. And I've never been in a situation where like I disagreed necessarily with the filmmaker, because by the time we're shooting and making the movie, we're really on the same wavelength there. And all of those filmmakers too, we've owned it together. So it's very much a collaborative situation.
Just to speak to this a little bit, what you're saying is so spot on about getting the vision in the can, so to speak. So whether it's the writer or the director or whoever is understood as lead, I've been in positions as a producer where an executive producer, somebody who was funding a film, was threatening to pull money if a scene was shot. But I knew that scene was really important to the writer. And so I had to stand my ground and say, that scene is going to be shot. Let's just get it in the can and see what happens. It might not make final cut, and we'll talk about it then. But your role really is to it's really sacred, and it's a relationship that is so important, and
Yeah, really protecting the vision.
yeah, protecting the vision. And I love what you're saying about that, and it's so important. I love that.
How long did the shoot take, and how long did post-production on the film take?
The shoot was 50 days over 4 months. That's a very long shoot in my world. I usually make movies in 20 days, but something that we do when I'm working with Chloe is that we shoot for longer. Our days themselves are usually it's like a 10 to 12 hour day for a normal shoot, but ours are more like 8 hours, because working with non-actors that are not used to or understands the kind of way that a shoot is, so we don't want them to get tired, but we're also working so much outside, and depending on the light that it ends up working out that way. And also we give more time too, so that there can be this spontaneity and room for things to change.
I want to note that question came from our founder, Stephen Krams, who actually owns a post-production facility here in Miami.
Oh, and how long
Film
post took?
Digital Lab.
Right.
Yeah.
How long post took was it was, well, so we finished the movie in we shot in 2018, but then Chloe went and directed the Eternals Marvel movie. So that sort of put a pause on our post-production. And then in the end, I think it was a blessing, because then she came back and she had some perspective when she went to edit. And so she started editing probably like March, no, actually more of the beginning of last year. And we started to get cuts from her in March, because I remember one of the first cuts that I saw was like right after the lockdown. And yeah, and then we premiered in September. It wasn't a long post of like actually working, but because we had that period of time where we were on a hiatus, it was longer than normal.
Can you talk about that first cut that you saw and how you felt?
I went and like bawled in the bathroom afterwards for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
It was very much there already.
Yeah.
And it made me like miss my family so much.
Yeah.
It was a really emotional experience that I'd never had before watching a first cut.
Yeah.
Speaking of family, I want to talk about something real quick with regard to your parents, because when I reached out to you, you'd mentioned how you were appreciative of the cinema, and how your parents wanted to familiarize themselves with the types of films that you wanted to make, and so they decided to volunteer here because we play the kinds of films that you want to make. And this past year, we've all probably realize how much we take for granted the things that we have, do, like going to the movies. Who would have thought you couldn't go to the movies for a year, and all that? So what is it, and also, since you mentioned that Swallows had, a day and date, there's this constant question of watching movies online, streaming versus going to the theater. And here are your parents wanting to connect with you by watching those films, and so they volunteer here, when instead they could just be watching the movies at home, right? What is it that you think like about a theater, going to the movie, actually going out and sitting down in that auditorium, that makes it so special?
I really think it's the communal experience, and I think that's why, it's even as much as things might be moving online, I'm still going to be wanting to make films that play in a theater, because there's I've watched films before that like first in the theater and then online, and like it feels different, like seeing it up on the big screen. You also are not, you're not distracted, with phones or whatever, and you're sitting and breathing next to other people, hearing them laugh or hearing them cry. And I think that just enriches the experience a million times over.
Yeah.
And I hope that after all of this, that, and I really do think people are going to, as soon as they feel comfortable, are going to really go back to the theater, because I think that during this time they're realizing how much they miss that experience, the communal experience.
Can I ask you a question about the theater or the cinema experience? And this is going to be a very selfish question, but you know, we're a nonprofit art house and we love your movie. Our patrons love your movie. It is performed so well. Are you familiar with the art house cinema world? And if so, can you talk about it a little bit?
A little bit, because our first film, Songs My Brothers Taught Me, we couldn't find a distributor. Like, it premiered at Sundance and then it went and it played Cannes, but yet like we couldn't find a US distributor. And so some point we got like an offer for just like streaming on Netflix, but not it being like a Netflix movie, very small offer. And Chloe and I were like, we can't do that. We spent all this time putting our hearts and souls into this movie, and it's just gonna go up there and no one's gonna know it's there. So we started to contact art house cinemas all over the country, and we started booking it. And all of the cinema owners were so generous and giving, and like they shared with me tips, and like, you know, like one person said at one point, like, you know, in order for my audience to come and see this, you're going to have a screening in New York and get a review in the New York Times. And so it was from that then we like focused and we got Film Forum in New York to screen the film. But I wasn't aware that there was this, that there was, if that felt like a community actually of all these art house cinema owners. And it was really, really neat to be engaging directly with them.
Yeah, we, the art house cinema community is very tight knit and very big and also very small. It is like an independent film production. It's, we do have an annual get together, which, you know, has been put on hold because of the pandemic. But I appreciate it very much. And films like yours and just the specialness of it, and also your background, you know, I'm so grateful to you and to being a part of this Q&A and answering our questions and our community's questions. You know, the work that you're doing is really spectacular and really special. And I think one thing that you should know is that it's, you know, even based on the question that we're seeing tonight, is that it's affecting people's lives, and that's really special.
Thank you, and thank you guys for having these art house cinemas, because like these are you know, early movies, especially like the only way that we're really reaching audiences is by these art house cinemas that are supporting independent film.
So we're about to wrap up, so I want to kind of talk about just looking to the future. I understand Chloe is working on post-production again for Eternals. I can't imagine what that is like working on a Marvel film. So what is her next project? What is your next project? Are you guys going to be working together again? Can you tell us a little bit, you know, what can we look for on the horizon?
She is working on a Dracula adaptation. And I am not working on that. We're not exclusively work together. It's really a project to project, and like what's right for us to work on together. So she's doing that, and I have a few projects that I'm developing with writers. I have some projects that I'm putting together, packaging, trying to attach talent, and really.
You have a first look. You have a first look deal, don't you?
Yes, that happened.
Yeah,
during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's impressive. I have to see, when I saw your first look deal, it's really impressive. Congratulations, and it's nothing short of incredible talent and hard work that exists.
Thank you, appreciate that.
And then there was a question from Ale Odriozola that really relates to this. So in looking to the future, are you 100% happy in the role of a producer, or do you feel that at some point you might want to pivot into directing as your career progresses?
Well, when I was in school, I really loved directing. I discovered that while I was there. And it's something that, you know, I don't say I will never do, but I really do love producing. It's like as a producer, you really get to interact with all of the different departments, all of the different phases in a way that a director might not. You know, like sometimes they make the film and then they are off to their next one, whereas a producer is really on for the life of the film. And so I really do love it, but we'll see. You know, maybe there'll be some project in the future that I might want to have a go at as a director.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that you know, not everybody may be familiar with Mollye's background, but she has directed films, so she, you know, she is also a director. And I think you have acting credits too, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Javier, can you tell her what our viewer Johanny Ponce had said?
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to say. Just to kind of wrap this up, Johanny Ponce is the one who asked the question about what our producer does, and I want to. She responded, and I'm going to read this verbatim. Johanny said, "Thank you. Nomadland is a wonderful movie. I was so impressed. When my retirement time comes, I have to decide what I really want to do. This movie changed my life. Thank you." So
wow, thank you.
So with that note, I want to say, Mollye, thank you so much for talking with us. Brenda, thank you for joining me in this conversation.
Oh, Mollye and Javier, thank you so much for just letting me be here.
Yeah, and huge thanks to, again, Pam and Andy, Mollye's parents, for making this happen. So on Monday, the Oscar nominations are going to be announced. Fingers crossed, you know, we're definitely rooting for you. The ceremony is going to be, like April 27th or something. It's like the last Sunday. So I'm sure this is quite a ride for you. We're, you know, with you on this, and good luck. And
are you coming to Miami anytime soon?
Oh, yes.
I hope so. I you know, as soon as we can, you know, I feel comfortable traveling and have.
We'll roll out the red carpet for you. We actually have a red carpet. We'll roll out the red carpet for your parents. You come with them.
You're from Miami originally, right?
Yes.
So,
and also, do you want to give a shout out to your school, because people watching it's gonna blow their minds.
Oh, New World School of the Arts?
Yes.
Yes. I went to New World. I was there in music. Actually, Lulu Wong, who did The Farewell, also went to New World. That is a really special place.
Yeah.
So are you going to be making a film in Miami soon?
I would love to.
Yeah, there's a burgeoning scene here, so definitely.
I've made 3 of them, so I'll I'll help you.
Just got to get the state to have some tax credits.
Yes.
Cool.
Sandy Leiterman, we need to talk to her. She'll help that make that happen.
Thank you again, Mollye. Good luck with everything.
Mollye, thank you.
And thank you everybody for attending. See you down the road. Take care.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.